You are not the first kind of human to walk this earth. That is not a metaphor. That is not poetry. That is a biological fact that most people never fully sit with. At least 8 other species of human have existed on this planet. They walked upright. They made tools. Some of them buried their dead. Some of them made art. And every single one of them is gone. Everyone except you. The question is not whether they existed. We have their bones. We have their tools. In some cases, we have their DNA, extracted from fossils hundreds of thousands of years old. The question that keeps scientists up at night is simpler and far more unsettling. What happened to them? The answer, it turns out, is not what most people expect. And once you understand it, you will look at your own species very differently. Start with the ones you probably know the name of, Neanderthals. They lived across Europe and Western Asia for roughly 400,000 years. 400,000 years. To put that in perspective, your entire recorded human history, every empire, every war, every invention, fits inside the last 5,000 years. Neanderthals were here for 80 times longer than that. They were not the dim, hunched brutes that early scientists imagined. Paleoanthropologist Juan Zillon spent decades studying Neanderthal sites in Europe and found something that changed the field completely. Neanderthals used pigments to decorate their bodies. They collected eagle feathers and wore them. They created abstract markings on cave walls. These are not the behaviors of a creature running on pure instinct. These are the behaviors of a mind that thinks about itself, that wants to be seen, that creates meaning. And yet around 40,000 years ago they vanished. Right around the time your direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, arrived in Europe from Africa. That timing is not a coincidence, but the story is more complicated than simple conquest. For a long time, the dominant theory was replacement. Homo sapiens arrived, they were smarter, better organized, better armed, and they simply outcompeted the Neanderthals for food and territory until nothing was left. A slow extinction through superior competition. Then geneticists cracked open the Neanderthal genome, and they found something nobody expected. You have Neanderthal DNA right now inside your cells. If your ancestry is non-African, between 1 and 4% of your genome came from Neanderthals. Geneticist Svante Pääbo, who won the Nobel Prize for this work in 2022, showed that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals did not just compete, they met. They lived alongside each other for thousands of years. They had children together. This changes everything about how you understand what happened. The Neanderthals did not simply disappear. Part of them became you. But that still does not explain where the rest went. And Neanderthals are only one piece of a much larger puzzle. In 2003, on a small Indonesian island called Flores, archaeologists discovered something extraordinary. A skeleton, a complete adult human skeleton. But it stood just over a meter tall. Its brain was roughly the size of a chimpanzee's, and it was only 50,000 years old. They named it Homo floresiensis. The press immediately called it the Hobbit. And for years, scientists argued about what it actually was: a diseased modern human, a developmental abnormality, something else entirely. Then more fossils emerged, and then more. An entire population of small-bodied, small-brained humans who had been living on that island, isolated, for possibly 700,000 years. They had evolved in isolation, shrinking over generations in a process called island dwarfism, the same process that shrinks elephants and hippos when they get stranded on islands with limited resources. Homo floresiensis made stone tools. They hunted pygmy elephants. They survived on Flores for hundreds of thousands of years. And then, around the time modern humans arrived in the region, they were gone. Then in 2010, a finger bone found in a Siberian cave changed everything again. Geneticist Pääbo's team extracted DNA from it and discovered it belonged to a completely unknown species of human. They named them Denisovans after the cave where the bone was found. No skull, no full skeleton, just a finger, a tooth, and a fragment of DNA. But that DNA told a story. Denisovans had spread across an enormous range, from Siberia down through Southeast Asia and possibly into the Pacific. And like the Neanderthals, they interbred with Homo sapiens. If you have ancestry from Papua New Guinea or Aboriginal Australia, up to 5% of your genome is Denisovan. Some Tibetan populations carry a Denisovan gene variant that helps their bodies process oxygen at high altitude, a direct biological gift from a species that no longer exists. So you are not just Homo sapiens, you are a living archive, a biological record of every encounter, every crossing, every merging that happened across hundreds of thousands of years of human history. But still the question remains, what actually ended them? Paleoanthropologist Chris Stringer at the Natural History Museum in London has spent his career trying to answer this. His conclusion is not a single cause, it is a convergence. Climate change was shifting habitats across Europe and Asia, pushing populations into smaller and smaller territories. Homo sapiens brought new diseases that populations with no prior exposure had no immunity to. Competition for resources intensified. And crucially, Homo sapiens had something the other human species did not have at the same level, a capacity for symbolic thought, for long-distance trade networks, for cultural transmission across generations that allowed knowledge to accumulate faster than any individual lifespan. It was not that Neanderthals were stupid, they were not. It was that Homo sapiens had a particular kind of social and cognitive flexibility that allowed them to adapt faster, cooperate with strangers more readily, and share information across larger groups. In a stable environment, Neanderthals had survived for 400,000 years, but the world stopped being stable, and in an unstable world, flexibility wins. This is the part that should stop you cold. The characteristics that allowed your ancestors to survive while others vanished, the ability to cooperate with strangers, to build trust across groups, to transmit knowledge symbolically, to adapt behavior faster than biology, those are not ancient relics. They are the same characteristics that define your life today. Your ability to work with people you have never met, your ability to learn from someone who lived 1,000 years ago through a book, your ability to change your behavior based on a story someone told you. These are the tools that ended the Neanderthals, and they are the tools you use every single day without noticing. Here is the thing that gets stranger still. The other humans were not failures. They were extraordinarily successful for their time and place. Homo erectus survived for nearly 2 million years, longer than any other human species, longer than Homo sapiens has existed by a factor of 10. Homo heidelbergensis hunted giant animals in coordinated groups. Neanderthals survived ice ages that would have collapsed modern civilization. These were not failed experiments. They were complete, functioning, thriving forms of human life. They are gone not because they were inferior, they are gone because the world changed, and the particular set of traits that Homo sapiens carried turned out to match the new conditions better. That match was not guaranteed. In different conditions, in a different world, it might have been Neanderthals standing here asking what happened to us. You are the last human, not the best human, the last one standing after a very long and complicated story. And somewhere in your genome, the others are still with you. A Neanderthal brow ridge that never quite went away. A Denisovan gene that helps a Tibetan shepherd breathe at altitude. Small traces of every meeting, every crossing, every life that came before yours and became part of what you are. Tonight, when you look in a mirror, you are not looking at the end of the human story. You are looking at the only survivor of a story that started 2 million years ago and included species and lives and minds that we are only now beginning to understand. The others did not disappear. They became you.